I guess it's just me and you, Karina. I don't know what happened to the other person. Good morning. What we're going to do today is just talk about hi, Kat. So what we're going to do today is talk about the upcoming assignment. So the idea is to analyze one of Diego Rivera's murals and figure out, like, how do we talk about it? How do you describe a mural? So there's a few things that we might want to look at. Good morning. We might want to describe the images in the mural. We want to talk about the historical context, like where the mural is, because this might have something to do with the meaning. And we want to try to describe the narrative overall. What is Rivera trying to say? What's his purpose in painting this mural? What's the message? And how do we understand that? That's the question. How do we know what the message is in the mural? Again, the message could be very different depending on where you're standing or what's going on in your life. So one of the things we can look at, a really good source, is to look at the My Art, My Life book, where he talks about a lot of the murals and why he painted them and what was going on in his life. So this could be a really good reference, and this is kind of the reason why I signed this book, is so you can understand it and you'll see, well, like, understand what was going on at the time, what inspired him, what other things were going on, and that'll give some insight into who all these people were. Because one of the things that Rivera did is that his work, he didn't make up a lot of these characters. These were people, the people pictured in the videos, in the murals, were real people that he met that had significance. And this was part of the idea of social realism. Social realism was a painting or public art that would be used to convey social messages, and the realism part was to try to make it accessible to working people. This was the goal, is to use painting as a form of messaging, of reaching people and allowing them to visualize other outcomes rather than the reality that was right around them, to try to visualize and to understand larger political forces. Hey, Stephanie, can you just mute your microphone, or I'll mute it? Yeah. Okay, just unmute it when you want to speak, if anybody wants to speak. So these were some of the things that you might look at. So this was a time, the Mexican Revolution and shortly after was a time of experimentation, a time where people were searching for answers. Here, this revolution happened, a huge upheaval that transformed many of the institutions of the country, that freed people from debt peonage, lessened the power of the church, opened up new forms of popular participation. And even though the land distribution really didn't begin in earnest, there was some land distribution, but really didn't begin massively until later, we can see a massive education project that went on. And the mural project was part of this larger literacy program. And if we think of it, and this is something that I think you should take into account when you're analyzing the murals, is the mural movement, especially in the Ministry of Education, in the preparatory school. This is a place where teachers are prepared, where hundreds of murals were painted by the top muralists. The idea was to use these to give images to the teachers, the people who are going to be spreading these revolutionary ideas about Mexican history, about Mexican identity, and to create a revolutionary curriculum in a country with massive illiteracy. So the first literacy campaign was very difficult. Was a literacy campaign to be carried out in a place with very few teachers and schools. So you can see in La Maestra Rural and other paintings, you can see some of these images depicted. So how do we read one of these murals? What is the narrative? Well, we can look at the historical context. When was it painted? What was going on? And if you can, look in the My Art, My Life book and see if there's any references to this particular mural or this time period where you could get an idea of what Rivera was thinking. One of the murals that you could look at is at riveramural.org, which is the Pan American Unity mural at San Francisco City College. And I haven't been able to figure out how exactly to do this, to show it on the screen. But you can go to that mural site and you can look at it. And what's nice about this, why don't you, can you click on that while you're still on here? So you'll notice in this mural site, you're able to see the murals. Each one has a key and a panel that explains what's going on. But also there's many narratives and explanations about the mural, including Rivera's own words, what he said about this. And you'll find this in many of the other murals. In the text, you'll see analysis of these murals that'll give you some of the ideas about how to read these. So if we look at the larger context, the mural movement was created as part of a larger education program, but also the muralists themselves, the artists, came together in the syndicate of technical and creative workers, or a cultural workers union, to be able to create some unity and to create guidelines for what socially responsible artists should do. We can see the country in turmoil and many of the institutions being recreated and reformed. New people looking for new ways to implement some of the laws that were opened up in the Mexican Constitution. We see the formation of agricultural cooperatives called ejidos on some of the land that's redistributed. We see communities coming together, workers beginning to organize. We see many different movements throughout the country. And the idea is to portray this idea of movement, of social progression through images. So how do you, what images do you choose as a muralist? So we can see that many of the muralists began to look to the indigenous past, to create favorable images of working people, to show the work process and how there's dignity in manual labor. Some of the depth, the accomplishments of the indigenous people. We see one of the things that Porfirio Diaz tried to do during his term was to create the image of the Aztec past. And even the concept of the indigenous people as Aztecs is something that Porfirio Diaz and his group of científicos tried to create. We also see within the Catholic Church also a movement to create some linkage between mestizo people and their indigenous past. This is where we see in the 19th century, many people, the late 19th century, many people being displaced from their land as Porfirio Diaz makes a push towards industrialization of agriculture, which means creating fewer and larger plantations. So People who were farmers become farm workers, pushed off their land, forced to work on large plantations. Massive migrations of people as there's a big push to consolidate large holdings. People become disconnected from their traditional communities and from their traditions. So one of the things we see in the Catholic Church is a push to try to create some link and to keep people within the church. Within this, we see the beginnings of the Catholic Church, especially the Jesuits, beginning to get involved in resurrecting some of the indigenous culture and cultural practices. We see the church sponsoring Aztec dance and celebration of La Virgen de Guadalupe using indigenous dance. And we see the concheros, the Aztec dancers that you see around us in many of the communities here in California emerging, and the recreation of the myth of the indigenous past. Even the term Aztec, which the people who lived in this area called themselves Mexica, the Mexica culture, that the Spanish renamed Aztec. Aztec as taking the first syllable of Aztlan, the homeland of the Mexica people who migrated south to the Valley of Mexico to create the capital Tenochtitlan. But by calling them Aztecs, changing their name, they're also erasing and creating any links, between the indigenous past and the indigenous present. So we see the part of the role of the muralist is to resurrect and to provide positive images of the indigenous past, tell the story, the history of Mexico, of what happened, of the conquest, of the role of the church, etc. So these are things that you can look at by recasting and recreating, again, how the indigenous traditions have lasted and influenced modern Mexico. And these are things that you see in the murals. So these are things that you can mention, and we can see in the My Art, My Life book, Rivera talking about these at great length. So anybody have any questions about how to approach this assignment and what are some of the things you could talk about? Go ahead, either turn on your microphone if you want to talk, or just type it in. Don't be shy. Nobody? Good question. So we'll see, was there always a communist connection in Rivera's murals? Well, it depends on how you look at it. That's a really good question. We can see pretty much there is, if you dig back deep enough, that the concept of social realism, that while not a communist connection, is a style that emerges out of the Russian Revolution, that emerges in Eastern Europe as a means of redefining what the role of a painter is. So if you start there, what the intention of the painter is, you could say that there is a communist connection, because we can see previously in art school, and even today, if you take art classes, they'll tell you you ask the question, well, what is the goal? What is my goal as an artist? What am I supposed to do as an artist? And the answer is that you're supposed to inspire other people, create art for reflection, for people to reflect. But to talk about social issues is not considered part of the role of the artist in the normal art world. We can see that the revolutionary artist, as the Mexican revolutionary artists define their role, we can see they describe something very different. That our role is to educate people, to highlight elements of the proletarian culture, the culture of working people. And in Mexico, this is to talk about the mestizo past, to talk about the myths, to talk about how things came to be, how the rich got rich, how they maintain their wealth, how do poor people survive. All of these stories of survival and maintaining themselves. So again, the communist connection is that he's portraying working people, that he's portraying the lives of working people, the richness of Mexican culture. And this is part of creating a positive image, of empowering people to feel good about themselves and to act, to see themselves as linked to other people. Again, it's not that I'm a loser, that there's a system that's pushing me down, and that together we can work together. And this is a theme in many of the murals. Was that clear? So the answer is yes, there probably is a communist connection, more from the intent of the artist. Question about the mini mural. So the mini mural, we're going to get to that, but the mini mural is basically anything that you create. The idea is to put yourself in the shoes of one of the artists and to create some kind of message, express some idea through images. So this could be something so simple as a collage that you can just put together. Let's say you don't know how to draw, you don't have a paint, you don't know how to paint, you're super busy because you're taking a bunch of classes and blah, blah, blah. You're busy. I assume that. So think about an idea. How do I express an idea? My past, my pain, crisis in North Korea, student debt, anything that you can think about, and how do you express this through images? So if you can draw something, you can create a collage. The idea is just to put yourself in the shoes of the artist for a minute. Is that clear? So I'm not grading this on the beauty or the aesthetic qualities, but it's just a question of doing it, to try it out, to say, okay, I'm Frida, and here's my pain, here's my life. And just think of how you would express that through images. So again, if you can't draw the images, you can cut them out of a magazine, you can Photoshop, anything that you want. A lot of people curse me that this is painful, this is difficult. But you find once you get into it and you put yourself in the mindset of one of these artists, that a lot of things will become clear. So, and again, if you do it, you get credit. If you don't, you don't. That's how it is. So I'm not going to grade it on the content of your art. That, oh, this is badly painted, therefore you get a lower grade. No. Do what you can. And many people find hidden skills and talents. Anyone else have any other questions? So the main thing I'm going to be looking for in this is detail. That I'd like you to provide detail, as much detail as you can, and explain yourself in this exercise. Try to give as much detail and dig in to find out what is the meaning specifically. Okay, if you feel your project's too personal, yeah, you can just share it with me and not with the class. And if you feel like you want to share with the class, you can. There's a link that'll just go to me, and there's a link that you can share with the class. So you can just send it to me, and I won't share it with anybody. Or you can put it in the one with the class, and then people will discuss it. Okay, if you feel that it's too personal. And I teach this class at San Francisco City College also in a lecture class, and it always turns into a sort of a Dr. Phil moment as people put up their murals and start crying and talking about all their pain and all the things that they've gone through. And it's it's actually a very cathartic exercise to kind of look and document your life. And sometimes it's joyful and sometimes it's painful, depending on where you are. Anybody have any other questions? So if you have any doubts about the assignment, feel free to reach out to me personally. I can email. We can have a private video chat about it. And you're all doing really well. I'm always astounded by the work that's coming in, the quality of the essays. And if you feel like you're not doing well and you want extra credit, you can reach out to me and we can discuss how you can get extra credit. I want you to do well in this class. I want you to succeed, and I'm going to give you all the opportunities to do that. So if you feel like you didn't do well in an assignment, talk to me and we can talk about extra credit. Okay? Anything else?